All right. Well, Steve said, my name is Patrick, and I am an alcoholic. Before I get started here, uh, talking about these steps 1 through 12, uh, I'll qualify myself a little bit. Uh, I've I started drinking when I was really young, 9 years old. Um, I've had by the time I was 16 or 17, I was full blown out of control. It was every day. By the time I was 17, uh, I had some circumstances that led to me getting introduced to some other symbols. Bottles are only a symbol of alcoholism. Well, mine reached some levels of some pill bottles too. Uh, I've had probably 7 DUIs, multiple two trafficking charges, about 25 AIs, PIs, or whatever. Uh, but I want to clarify that none of those charges, been homeless, none of that really qualifies me as an alcoholic. So when I say I'm an alcoholic, I mean simply that once I take the first drink in me, I have little control over the amount I take. Uh, I do have this abnormal reaction that the AA text talks about as and refers to as the phenomenon of craving. And I didn't know exactly what that meant when my alcoholism got into problems other than alcohol, pain pills, heroin, crystal meth. Uh, like it kind of accelerated my suffering until I finally got to the point to where I was looking at about 15 years in the penitentiary, and I thought to myself, well, I ain't never done any kind of treatment. I could at least go to treatment for a little while and chew some tobacco and eat some cheeseburgers before I go do this time, because I just knew I was going to do that. Eventually, do that 15 years in the penitentiary, and the graciously the judge granted me that opportunity, and I went there. And lucky for me, I got I got in a treatment center here in Kentucky in the United States that uh, had some people that were armed with facts about themselves and alcoholism. And I just got there and I thought I could make myself the easier time and stay out longer if I just done what they said I should do, like and acted like I was doing at least. But the more that I started hearing these guys, they started talking about their experience with step one, and started getting me into. We had big book studies, and started reading this book that I'd had on my shelf for 15 years when somebody had suggested that I read it, and it got in there. And as soon as I got into the doctor's opinion and had a little bit of people like tell me who that was and how that came about, uh, he told me as soon as he started writing his letter that that we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe that our body is quite as abnormal as our mind, right? So, like step one being we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Uh, he went ahead to say like it didn't satisfy us to be told that we were outright mental defectives and full flight from reality. Uh, these things are true to some extent, to a considerable extent amongst some of us, but we believe that our bodies were sickened as well. And I had never even considered that. But these guys that were recovered alcoholics had started sharing their experience with me, like it tells them to in working with others in step 12, and sharing their experience of how they came to believe that their experience with the phenomenon of craving. So like Silkworth goes on and tells me that in my body, so like it tells me that I have a two-part problem, right? if I've suffered alcoholic torture, I have a two-part problem. I'm not powerless just because I'm crazy, I'm weak-willed, which is as far as I'd got. Like that's what I thought I was. I thought I was ashamed of myself. Why can't I control my drinking or my drug use like I see some people do it? So like he starts to tell me that that this one part of my problem in my body is basically the manifestation of an allergy, right? And what's an allergy? An allergy is just an abnormal reaction to a substance. But it's kind of crazy. It says that this allergy, this abnormal reaction that my body has manifests or shows itself as this phenomenon of craving, and a phenomenon being an unexplained event, right? So like it says like once I take any form of alcohol in my system and I set off this allergy, my body's reaction is this phenomenon of craving, which causes me to have little control over the amount. Well, this started to make sense to me, right? Um, and then he goes on to say like men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. This sense of ease and comfort is so elusive that after a while cannot differentiate. While I admit it's injurious, after a while I can't differentiate the true from the false. Uh, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And it says like, so they're restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience this sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks they see others taking with impunity, and when they without the consequences they can control it. So basically I started to differentiate the difference between me and them, and the difference being that my body reacts differently, right? So what happens when I put the first one in me? It says I pass through the well-known stages of a spree. Well, I'll kind of tell you what that looks like. For alcohol, it looks a little bit different, but uh, with drugs, it was basically say I'm working, I'm holding down a job or something, and I tell myself maybe I haven't used anything for a little bit, and I tell myself, I'll get paid this weekend, like I've been doing pretty good. I'll buy me 10 pills or whatever, like, and as soon as I do that first one, or I'll buy me one pill, right? I'm just gonna do one, right? And do that first one, set this phenomenon of craving off, and before you know it, like I'm telling myself after that, well, I just buy 10. I do one a day for 10 days, right? Cannot differentiate the true from the false. Uh, Before the weekend's up, I've spent my whole paycheck, right? This phenomenon of craving's still kicking with me. Like it's still like I'm dealing with something beyond my physical control or mental control. And so the first thing I usually start doing after I've spent all my money is like, oh, can I borrow some money off my boss? No, I can't. Well, let me start fronting off these guys, right? Hey, I'll pay you Friday, this, that, and the other. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by, maybe it didn't. Uh, that before you know it, it's like I'm way in debt, owe out way more than I can do it, and I'm like can't hardly go to work without it, right? So like after I've burned all those bridges and nobody's fronting with me anymore, I still can't stop because of this phenomenon of craving. So this so next I start selling my stuff, right? The stuff I've accumulated or pawning or whatever, this, that, and the other, until all that's gone. I still can't stop. So like the next thing I do, because I'm dealing with something beyond my control, the next thing I do is I'm waiting on mom to go to the bathroom, and I'm getting in her purse, right, and taking her credit card or taking her money, this, that, and the other. And eventually, like, and she kicks me out, like, hey, you can't come back here. Don't ever come back here if you're gonna steal off of me. I still cannot stop. So the next thing I'm taking from my kids. And I'm justifying that, saying like, well, I bought them that Xbox. I can go sell that, right? I can take their iPod and sell it. And then their mom kicks me out. Like usually I'm in a jail cell, but something beyond my control stops me. I either have no more resources, and I do what the book says every time. Like something stops me. Usually I'm sitting in a jail cell, and I'm like, I make this firm resolution. I'm never going to do this again. And I would say I theorize about this, but it's like you could probably hook me up to a lie detector test and I'd probably pass that at that moment because I mean that with everything in me. You know, I don't want to do it. And my parents, my kid's mom, somebody out there who does not understand alcoholism either, uh, believes me. They want to believe me. They know, other than this aspect of my life, that I'm a pretty decent human being, that I have the capacity to be honest and a decent human being. So they get me out of jail or they let me back in. But the problem is, I go back to my original state. I'm restless, irritable, and discontented again. And that's one of the keys here in what I've found in this first step is part of that is because I didn't want to front off them guys and not pay them back. I feel guilty about that. I feel a little ashamed of myself. I damn sure didn't want to sell all my stuff. I damn sure didn't want to steal off my kids or my mom. I'm full of guilt, shame, and remorse, right? Uh, I'm a little bit irritable that some people can use or drink successfully and can control it. And they don't do these types of things. They don't end up in jail. They don't steal. And I'm full of shame and I'm so discontent with myself that I do not. So this is the mental aspect of it, right? Two problems, body and mind, two-part problem. When I feel this way, I have this mental obsession, right? And a mental obsession being a thought that overrides another thought. I got two simultaneous thoughts going on right here. I got one that says that my rational part of my brain that looks at the truth says, man, Pat, this happens every time you put the first one in you. It may look a little different because you're trying to control it every time, but this same stuff happens. You always end up right back here. And then I've got this other thought that simultaneously happened that says, man, I just feel so on the end. I'm experiencing those bedevilments it talks about in We Agnostics, just feelings of depression, uselessness, self-pity, problems with personal relationships, couldn't control my emotional nature. And when I feel like that way on the inside, again, the only thing that's on my mind, and this sense of ease and comfort that is so elusive, I can't put my finger on it, that's going to make it better. And after a while, I can't differentiate the truth from the false. So I tell myself the same lie that I've told myself over and over. I got I got one thought that says this is going to happen if I do this. I got another thought that says this time's going to be different. And I got a mountain of evidence that it ain't never different. So what do? I convince myself I can use successfully and that I have some kind of control. And I put the first one in me, and this is repeated over and over and over. And the book tells me and this is repeated over and over until I can experience an entire psychic change. And psychic being of the mind, right? Right. So this is what is, how do I treat an allergy, right? If I'm allergic to peanuts, I'm probably not going to do peanuts, right? I'm not going to eat peanuts. If I'm allergic to penicillin, I'm not going to take penicillin, right? But how this sense of ease and comfort is so elusive, I cannot put my finger on how it makes me feel and just exactly what it is. Because I'll just be honest with you, if peanuts got me high, I'd probably be sitting here saying, hey, Steve, hold my EpiPen. And when I fall out on these peanuts, bro, just hit me with it. But don't do it too quick. Wait till I'm about to die, right? So what I understand in here is this is a first step, right? Like all I do is on page 30 and More About Alcoholism is none of us really want to admit that we're bodily and mentally different from our fellows, right? But that's all I'm doing here. I got to concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic, that I'm bodily and mentally different than other people. A lot of people get stuck there, right? But it gives me some good hints. Give me says like, okay, go on to More About Alcoholism, bro. Read the rest of it, bro, because there's all kinds of people that get stuck right here and think, because I did it. I had, oh, well, that's it. I just don't put the first one in me, right? That's it. That's the solution. But they give me Jim's story. They give me Fred's story. They give me the Man of 30. All these experiences where these guys thought that self-knowledge would fix it. And they're preparing me for step 2 here, right? If I'm suffering from this illness of alcoholism, if I have little control of the amount I take when I start, or have cannot quit entirely on my own power, then I'm suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer, right? So that leads me into step two. So step two being came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Okay, I believed in God for a while now, and it ain't kept me sober, right? So my experience with step two was a little bit different. I know the 12 and 12, it's like a 12 and 12 group or anything like that, but it says like you can lean on the fellowship. That wasn't my experience. I was well aware that y'all couldn't stop me, right? And I really didn't trust people anyway at this point. But I did, something came to me and said, man, these people, everybody I'm in this treatment centers with saying that this book, they're doing what it says in this book and it's getting them sober. I cannot get myself sober. So therefore it's a power greater than myself. So I get in with agnostics, right? And it tells me lack of power is my dilemma. That's my problem, powerlessness, lack of capital P power, right? We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, it tells me right there. That's exactly what this book's about. Its main object is to enable me to find a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem. So that's what I've done for step two. I believe in God, and that's the other requirement, right? It's like now on this simple spiritual cornerstone, a wonderfully spiritual structure can be built, right? So am I now, do I believe in a power greater than myself, or am I now willing to believe, right? And then we agnostic starts to point me towards these prejudices and this stubbornness that I've had in looking at spiritual things, because like I had some circumstances that made me a believer, but I wasn't always that way. I was at one time atheist, if not like almost always pretty sure that there wasn't anything like that, because I did have that scientific mind, logical mind, and use that to dissect and disprove God. And what I seen by getting into we agnostics was that I done that because I was a little bit jealous of people that had that, and I just could not differentiate the truth from the false, because they encouraged me to look at the truth, and the truth was faith's working for many peoples. It's living a happy, productive life, right? Millions of peoples across the globe. Um, Also, it tells me, it points to this truth, like, hey, buddy, you're a little bit, you've had faith in the whole time. You've had faith in your own reasoning, your own logic, right? And I did. I could not, like, they just kept shoving truth at me. And if I got in there and got really honest with myself, which is how it works, right? It tells me in the first paragraph of how it works. If I can be honest with myself, I can, and thoroughly follow this path, I can recover. So a few requirements for this. They said if I'll do exactly what this book says, it'll enable me to find this power. And the first, the first part of that is to believe, or be willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself. It also tells me that I can conceive of that power any way I want to. It don't have to be Jesus Christ. It don't have to be this. I can pick whatever, however that conceives. And where do I conceive of that? Deep down within myself, and it's got to come within. So like that's where I started. To be honest with you, I started with the old man in the sky, because that's about as limited as my conception was, right? Big white beard and shit. I don't know. And if that's still yours, it's great. Awesome. I don't know. Sometimes I overcomplicate that and wish I didn't, right? So it really don't matter. And then it pointed me somewhere else and said, hey, buddy, little line in there says, this power originates deep down within you. It's only there that it may be found. So I started looking somewhere that nobody ever told me to look again. This power's inside of me. Well, this don't make no sense. I was a little bit confused, but it's like, that that my science mind kind of, that made sense, right? It's like on an atomic level. I ain't gonna get into that either way. But anyway, so I do believe that these guys are getting sober. They say that they're doing these steps and it's getting them sober. They say they work them out of this book and it's getting them sober. Therefore, this book's a power greater than myself. They say it's God. I believe in that. They say that's a requirement. I can go on to step three. right? All right. So then it hits me with those sidewinder there. Says, buddy, your body and mind really ain't the deeper problem. You got a deeper problem. It's selfishness and self-centeredness, right? You want to play God. You think you can manage your life and it's going to be okay. And that's what you've been doing the whole time. And I was like, yeah, I kind of admit that. I'm a little self-centered, a little selfish, and I didn't really understand what it was, but I was convinced enough then, and I was at a hopeless state enough that I thought, well, I'm going to go through the whole process. And to be honest with you, I was just basically wanting to eat cheeseburgers and chew some tobacco for a little while longer before I went and done that time. But I thought, well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do what they said. So I started studying that, and I really didn't believe that selfishness and self-centeredness was the root of my problems, right? So step three, like the first requirement of that. And if I'm up to this point, basically, I've got behind two ideas. That's basically what I've done to this point. I've got behind the idea that I'm an alcoholic and I'm bodily and mentally different than other people, right? That's what makes me an alcoholic. I've got down with a power greater than myself that I'm going to find through working the steps and doing exactly what this book says will enable me to solve my problem. I've got behind that idea. Pertinent idea A, B, and C, right? I'm an alcoholic. I'm bodily and mentally different, and I cannot manage my own life. Had pretty good proof that that was the truth. No human power is going to relieve me of this alcohol. Mom couldn't keep me sober. My own kids begging me to stop couldn't keep me sober. Any kind of frothy emotional appeal did not work for me. Pertinent idea C. God could and would if I seek him, right? How do I seek him? By making a decision to go through with the rest of the steps, right? That's what I do. So I make this decision and I'm like, okay, first of all, the first requirement for this decision in step three is to be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success, right? I was not convinced. I'm just shooting you straight. But but that's what they said. So like I'm gonna go on and do it. I memorized that third step prayer, and basically it told me the wording was of course quite optional, right? But it tells me like first requirement, be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Second of all, I quit playing God, right? Hereafter in this drama of life, uh, God's going to be the director, and I'm going to be the I'm going to work for him, right? He's going to direct my life. He's going to be the principal. I'm going to be his agent. Basically, what that tells me is like I'm going to work for him, right, and do whatever he tells me to do. He's the father. I'm his child. What does the father do? Takes care of your kid, right? Based on these little simple concepts right here, like I can make a decision. So like, what does this third step prayer mean to me? God, I offer myself to thee to build with me. It means that I'm not building. He's not going to do all the work. I'm going to have to do some work, right? I'm building with him, right? Relieve me of the bondage of self. I wasn't convinced that self was the problem, but it says, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. And the wording, of course, quite optional. So I had to ask myself, what does this mean to me? When I got right down to it and got honest with myself, what this mean was this is a bargain I'm making. And boy, I'd made plenty of bargains in my life with God, right? Like, God, let me get high today. God, let me kill that big deer up there, right? Yeah, he come through on his end every time. You know what I mean? I'll go to church on Sunday. I'll turn my life over. He'd come through with his end and I would never stick to my end of the bargain. Basically, what I'm making a deal here is I'm offering myself over to him. And this is just my experience with this. So basically, in a clearest, simplest way that I understood it is, you take this from me, and I'll show other people. I'll help other people. I'll show them, bro. And then it tells me like, hey, this decision, vital and crucial step, but it's going to have little permanent effect, and it's really really clear on this. Like alcohol was only a symptom. It was a symptom of a deeper a deeper spiritual problem, right? The self-centeredness problem. So if this decision is going to have any lasting effect, now I got to go to work building with God, right, and take some action. So it tells me to launch out on a course of vigorous action, upon which a personal house cleaning is in order, right? Bill's a master here. Like he puts this in terms that I can understand, right? It's I'm gonna take an inventory. Like most of us have, we had to get down to causes and conditions, right? So this is where that restless, irritable, and discontent like comes in, right? I'm basically taking an inventory of self will, right? To see where I'm in self will, and that's causing me my problems, right? I'm putting down my restlessness, irritability, and discontent, and they're telling me that that's coming from me, from self will, from my own selfishness and self centeredness. I wasn't buying it, but I was willing to go through with it, right, and take an inventory. So he kind of puts it in terms I can understand, and we get back to can't differentiate the true from the false being the big problem, right? What is an inventory? If I'm taking an inventory in a store and trying to run a business, if I ain't going down through her and seeing what's working and what ain't, I'm not going to be successful in this business, right? So that's basically what I'm doing. And just like all good teachers throughout history, like they put it in words that I could understand and in a way that I could understand. So basically it says like most of us never took an inventory of our lives, right? So that's what I'm going to do. And one effort is to discover the truth about the stock and trade. So basically I'm taking a moral, truthful inventory of my life. So being convinced that self-will, my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. If I'm convinced of that, which I wasn't, we're going to look at its common manifestations, right? The first manifestation is the number one offender, resentment, right? So I'm going to list people, principles, and institutions with whom I've been angry at, right? I'm going to go way back to the beginning, start. My dad whipped my ass with a belt when I set the creek on fire with gasoline after he told me not to when I was 4, right? Again, when I climbed that pine tree down there, my 3rd grade teacher, and work all the way up to now, the things that I can still remember, right? And I put them down on paper. Tells me exactly what to do. Now we look at that 3rd column. After I list everybody, tells me that why are we angry? So I put down why. Now it asks me to look at how it's affected different parts of myself, and 12 and 12 points towards some instincts, but I'm not going to get into that. It's basically just different parts of myself, right? Uh, Pride, self-esteem, sex conduct, my sex relations, my social instinct, right? My personal relations, again, my pride, right? How does it affect that? And I had to have a good sponsor and had to have some people armed with facts about their stuff that were recovered to kind of point me towards what that meant, right? Uh, so I get over there and I say, okay, well, it does affect me this way, right? And then it goes into is like, well, we saw that these resentments, like it's plain to see that any life led with resentments is only going to produce like futility and unhappiness, right? Well, I had been unhappy, having problems with personal relationships, uh, and these things are okay with some people. Some people can live like that. Me being an alcoholic and trying to grow and maintain a spiritual experience, these things are poison to me. Like so, they have the power to actually kill, right? So it says these resentments they must be mastered. So like we had to look at it. We went back to the list for it held the key to the future, right? And we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. I've been letting people that done stuff to me over 40 some years live in my head and control how I feel. The world and its people uh, dominated me, dominated my emotional state, dominated my actions. It says like, well, this was our course. We began to look at the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, right? We asked, they like ourselves are sick too. Because like, oh, I was judging them. I was judging the hell out of them. They was sick. I just wasn't sick, right? And that's just some stuff I had to lie to myself to, so I didn't feel guilty over what I'd done, I guess. But we asked God to help us show them the same kindness, tolerance, pity, patience we cheerfully grant a sick friend. And then we get to where some shit starts happening for me. Like we put the wrongs others have done out of our mind, and we resolutely look at our own mistakes, right? Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I self-seeking or frightened? And when I done that and got really honest with myself, I found just what they said on page 62 was the truth. I'd made decisions based off my own self-interest, my own self-centeredness in all its many, many hundreds of forms. I'd stepped on somebody's toes. I'd done something to you, you retaliated, now I'm pissed off at you, and I stayed pissed off at you. This was a hard pill to swallow, right? But it was also at the same time very empowering, because up to this point, all y'all was the problem, and there wasn't nothing I could do about it, right? But when I seen that I had a part in this, and a big part in it, that was empowering, because now, like, hey, if y'all ain't all the problem, then maybe there is a solution to my problem, because I thought y'all was a problem. I thought the more I try to arrange y'all to get y'all to be how I need you to be, because I'm self-centered to the extreme, then the more I can fix my problems. But just like the book said, the more I tried to do that, the more y'all seen I was doing that, and the more y'all tried to snatch everything you could out of the show I thought I was running, right? So when I seen this, something magical happened in me, and it was through this 4-step resentment inventory that this is the first time in my entire adult life since I was about 16 that I believed this shit might work, right? I've seen it in you guys, but I believe it may work for me. It was like a light come on in me, and I thought, man, I'm going to do this. So I finished that inventory, and I went on to the fear inventory. And basically what I seen, because I'd done it the way the book outlined, every time that there was fear in my pride, in my resentment inventory, I bracketed fear, a little F right there below it. And I started to see that this isn't it, all the things that I was really afraid of. And I wasn't, up to that point, like I would have told you, I wasn't afraid of nothing, right? Big old shell, big hard ego shell. But I had all kinds of fears that was running my life. And it points to me and tells me that it's like self-reliance is the reason I have these fears. It's the cause. It tells me exactly where to look. I've been relying on my own thinking, and that's creating the fear, right? I think I can manage my own life. And this third step decision started to make way much more sense, right? Am I really going to live up to this decision? Am I going to trust infinite God, or am I going to keep trusting my finite thinking, my little old mind that has very limited information, right? That's what it goes on to try to make its plans and designs and think it can get what it wants. Self-seeking, right? Trying to wrest satisfaction out of this world by trying even harder. So I start to see it, and then I go on to the sex inventory, right? This explains it to me. Like, I'm not really a car guy, but I'm glad it done that, right? It tells me, it's like, well, most of us need an overhaul in there, right? When I overhaul a car, what do I do when I overhaul a car? I take each part out of that vehicle, right? And I look at it, I examine it real thorough, and I say, this part ain't no good. I need a new part, right? Take another part off, every single part, take it all the way apart, and say, this part's all right. Maybe I can clean it up a little bit and put it back. I think it just needs some cleaning up, right? So that's what we've done. And we subject each relation throughout my past. And the main goal of this, like, and it warns me, like, we need not be concerned with like other people's version of sex, because we go to the extremes on this. Some people are straight pepper diet, think that all the world's problems because we ain't having enough sex, and we ain't just polygamy, polygamous, or whatever, however you pronounce that. I don't know. I'm sure I butchered that. But anyway, and some of them think it's like all the problems is because of sex, right? So I don't want to get into that shit. I just want to look at my past and frankly analyze the past and get an idea of where they was messed up. I want to subject each relation to the test. And I asked myself, like, where did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy? Unjustifiably. Because that don't mean that implies that I'm not, if I do arouse jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness, it's not always my fault. But it tells me the key to that is, was it selfish or not? Did I arouse it being concerned only with me? Then it's unjustifiable, right? If I was concerned about you and aroused that or other people, then it was justifiable, right? Same thing when I got on fire, when I got recovered and started helping other people, right? That aroused some bitterness in my kid's mom. Like, so I look at my past. Who did I harm? Harmed a lot of people, right? And basically, I don't know. We don't want to be the arbiter of anybody's sex conduct. We all have problems, all right? This is between me and God. I look at my past and I pray to Him earnestly for the right ideal in each questionable situation, right? This is between me. Where do I want to fall at between this spectrum of straight pepper diet and no flavor for your fire, right? Where do I want to be? Where do you want me to be, God, in this? And that's between me and Him, right? And it goes on to tell me, it's like, what if I fall short of this ideal that me and God come up with, right? What if I fall short and stumble? Does that mean I'm going to go back to drinking? Not necessarily. Some people tell you that, but not necessarily so. It depends on us and our motives, right? If I'm truly sorry for what I've done, and I set the matter straight and try to grow towards something, keep going towards my ideal, then I'm probably not going to drink again. But if I'm not sorry for what I've done and I keep running on self, quite sure to drink. They're not theorizing about that. Probably going to do that. So to sum up about sex, probably the strongest instinct we have. I don't know. Some people debate that, but I think so. We pray earnestly. This is the only part in the book it says earnestly pray, right? So like, if I'm having problems with sex, like I pray earnestly for the right ideal, right? Where I want to be. Where do I want to be? Who do I need to be in my relationships with others intimately, right? For sanity, not to keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Strength to do the right thing. I pray for all these things. And if none of those are working, I find me somebody I can help, right? It'll take me out, it'll quiet this imperious urge. If I'm thinking about somebody else and how I can meet their needs, it takes me out of that imperious urge, which to yield would mean heartache, right? So that's what I do, right? So if I've taken an inventory up to this point, then I've began to see this resentment, this anger, all these things that I've been, and this fear that I've had starts to be replaced with seeing the world a little bit clearer for how it is. My eyes start to awaken, right? I start to see things clearly. And it really don't do no good. Like everybody sees things, everybody does things. Pretty much the world's selfish, just like I am, right? It's world self-centered. And I don't mean that in an apathetic, shouldn't care, but like or a cynical way. It's just the reality of the way things are, right? But people like me cannot live that way. I cannot justify resentments, right? So like I start to look at people with tolerance, pity, patience, genuinely, like when I'm wronged. Oh man, this person's just creating problems of their own makings, out of their own selfishness. And it makes it a whole lot easier to live up to that resentment prayer, right? And when I ask God to help me show them the same kindness, tolerance, pity, and patience, I cheerfully grant a sick friend. So Then I get to this other part, and like, believe me, I've done some sick shit in my life. So like now we're on step 5. Basically, I took an inventory. Like I got big problems. The reason I keep doing uh, can't stop setting this allergy off is because I can't differentiate the truth from the false. I've took a moral inventory. I've seen the truth, seen my grosser handicaps. But just in case, like, I probably need to have this fifth step discussion with somebody to make sure I'm not hiding anything, make sure that there ain't nothing in there, make sure that I can really gain enough humility. So we admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. Now, I believe the specific order of that, right? I admit these things to God because, like, oh, he's my confidant. He ain't gonna tell nobody, right? But he's going to give me back a little bit of a little bit more, right? Seeing things clearly. So I admit them to myself. Once he starts looking at me, I start looking at him. Now I gotta admit them to somebody else, right? Uh, I was hesitant about doing this, like I said, because I got some pretty sick stuff that I've done. But it says like if you know, we'll look at the best reason to do this first. If you don't do it, you probably ain't gonna overcome drinking, right? You probably ain't gonna overcome using. You're probably not gonna get enough humility that it takes to work the rest of the problem and stay sober the rest of your life. And you're not really gonna get free. So I done what it said. Like I pulled up my bootstraps and I went and I had me a good discussion with somebody and I just got clean, all the sick shit. And what I found was like, hell, the whole world's sick. Even confirmed it even more. Like my sponsor's like, well, yeah, I've done that too, man. No big deal. You know what I mean? All the stuff that I was so ashamed of throughout my life, and I felt like a little kid. You know how when you tell a lie when you're a little kid and you're so scared of being found out, and you feel like you've done bad because you've been conditioned to believe that you're bad over everything, and had this great fear. And then when the truth comes out, which it always does, I felt like I can breathe again, man. It's like, gosh, it's big weights lifted off my shoulders. That's what I felt like. So I done this hour reflection after this fifth step, right? And it tells me to take the book down from the shelf. You know, thank God for having known him better, uh, for my new relationship with him. And so I done that. And it says take the book down off the shelf and look at the first 5 proposals. You're trying to build an arch through which you're going to walk a free man, right? I want you to look at those first 5 steps and make sure, like, I ain't building this arch and skimping on the cement, right? You know, trying to mix mortar without sand. So I looked at it. Step 1, solid. I know I'm bodily different now and mentally different. Step 2, I'm starting to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. And then I got to step 3 and I was like, damn, I turned my life over to this book. I hadn't really sincerely took such a position as that, you know, God's going to manage my life. I'm still kind of in a sense just going to let the book manage it, which it worked out great because like I do know the book well, right? As a result of turning it over to that. So I done that. In that moment, after my 5th step, I sincerely took that position of I am going to be an advocate for God. I am going to work for him, right? I'm not just going to do what the book says and be so rigid and logical like I always been. Because God's will looks different for everybody, right? I'm going to have to use some discernment. So after that meditation, like I go on to 6 and 7, right? The 12 and 12 helped me a lot with this, with 6 and 7s, like, but it was still scary, right? Am I willing to let these things go? Because to be honest with you, selfishness served me pretty well. I was, the truth is, I was a terrible manager, but it served me pretty well. It seemed like it did at first glance. Dishonesty served me sometimes. Some of these things served me. Am I really willing to let these things go? Am I really willing to start to be a mature human being and grow in the likeness of my creator now? Don't worry about it. If you ain't, pray for the willingness, it tells me in the book, right? So, okay, there's some things that I still struggle with. I'm still lustful. I like material things, right? I still like tie-dye t-shirts and cool tennis shoes and stuff. Like until I scuffle. I fully ain't been willing to let that go yet, right? Uh, but that's okay. I'm still growing. I'm still aware of it. And I'm still praying for the willingness. One day it may get bad enough that I'll let it go. But those grosser handicaps, that it was beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was creating problems of my own making. Every problem I had was out of my own making. And it rose out of every one of these different forms of self-centeredness. So I'll go on to step 7, right? My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Now comes the hard part. What kept me from doing these steps a long time ago? Like, I got to take this shit. This spiritual life ain't no theory. This is where it happens. The real shit happens. I got to take this list I made and all these people I was resentful at, and some of them done me way worse than I done them. And I still got to go back and clean my shit up, right? I've made amends to cops, and it tells me specifically how to do that. I make a list. Recovery Dynamics helped me a lot with that, like with some stuff. And I start to discern wisdom, like, out of this, like, because it's not always clear. Like, I shouldn't make amends if I'm going to harm somebody. If there's somebody else involved in this, I should not. I've got to go to them and explain to them what's going on, right? I can't save my skin at somebody else's expense. I start to see that just how much wisdom is a valuable thing, and discernment of the truth is such a valuable thing when I start making amends. The big ones with the family, and it tells me exactly what to do. I sit down and frankly analyze the past, right? I make amends for exactly what I know, but just a tip for you guys, like, after I took responsibility for the things that I was aware of that I'd done, I opened it up and said, hey, I'm sure I've done some wrong to you and probably made you feel some type of way and harmed you in ways that I'm not even aware of. So please, just so I don't do it to you anymore or not to anybody else, please let me know, like that. And some of them are really receptive and give me some more things to take a look at, right? And we frankly analyze the past, both of us, because it ain't just about my looking at it. And I've done step 5 and seen the value of other people's perspective now, right? If I'm really trying to live this. And about halfway through, just like I said, like these promises start coming true, and I enter this world of the spirit, right? So now it's about maintenance and growth of the spiritual experience, right? I'm seeing, I know a new freedom and a new happiness. Now our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness, right? So we take the tool we learned in step 4 and 5 and 8 and 9, and we apply it on a day-to-day basis. I apply it on a day-to-day basis, right? Because, like, I just got my grocer handicaps. Like, I'm still sick. But if I continue to take inventory and really honestly watch for these things on a day-to-day basis, and really ask myself and honest with myself when I'm dishonest with myself mostly, right? The real subtle ways that I'm selfish, all these other fears that I really didn't get down to in step 4. And to be honest with you, my sponsor told me a lot of people get said, well, it's just you don't put it on paper. What tells me specifically how to take inventory, and that's on paper. I don't always put things on paper. My sponsor told me if the same resentment crops up 3 times, put it down on paper, bro. The inventory you're doing in your head ain't working. So that's what I do. Sometimes I wait till it's cropped up 5 or 6 times because I could be lazy, right? But that's the basis of it. Like, my at this time the obsession's been removed. I found this gift, and it's in this my sobriety and my being recovered. It's basically contingent on whether I what I do every day. I can't rest on my laurels of what I done yesterday, the inventory or the amends I done yesterday, and just say I'm good for a while, right? What do I do today? And I start to realize that this is like every day is a day that I need to properly use my will. What am I doing for God today, right? Am I being selfish? And these things are so important that it tells me that what I don't catch throughout the day in step 10, that when I retire each night, I get into step 11, right? And it tells me to do the same thing, and it words it around like it's a little bit different, but they tell me, like, where was you selfish, dishonest, resentful, or afraid? Instead of looking for fear, they call it afraid. Do I owe an apology, right? I basically work, when I say I work the steps, that's what I do. Like I take an inventory, 4-step inventory: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. When these things crop up, ask God to remove them at once, steps 6 and 7. If I've harmed somebody, make amends quickly, steps 8 and 9. Resolutely turn my thoughts to somebody I can help, right? Step 10 or step 12. These things are so important that it tells me that I need to look for it in case I miss something throughout my day-to-day busy life, right? And then I start to, it tells me a definite, and it took me a while to get in the habit of doing this, but it's like on awakening, this is the key, and there's a reason why it's 2 pages, and when we retire at night, it's only 1 paragraph, right? Because I'm getting ready to get ready for my whole day. So I look at the day ahead. I ask God to lead, direct, and guide my thinking, asking it to be clear, divorced from self-pity, self-seeking, dishonest motives. And if I do this every single morning, my thought life is placed on a much higher plane, right? I asked him if I'm ever ask him in the morning if I'm agitated or doubtful anytime throughout the day, help me pause and seek you for the right thought or action. If I face any kind of indecision, please give me an intuitive thought or action or inspiration. And many times throughout the day, thy will be done, not mine, right? But there's more action. I've got this gift now, right, of sobriety. It's real easy to not, because I've learned more by working with other people. But if I do not go out and try to help other hopeless addicts and alcoholics, then I'm going right back to my same problem, which is selfishness, right? And I cannot keep something that I don't try to freely give away, right? So I make time. I do that. Got many sponsees. It tells me specifically how to do that. I don't start out as a reformer. Don't try to push religion on anybody. It actually tells me not to even bring up my conceptions and stuff to another person. It tells me to specifically talk to a person in everyday language with spiritual principles, right? It tells me exactly how to do these things. But the main thing I want to get over with step 12, I don't put the cart ahead of the horse, right? I don't come at you telling you need God in your life, because people told me that. The more they told me that, the more I wanted to run from them. First, I've got to explain to you through my experience of this body and mind problem that makes me not be able to control my alcohol. And if I can get you to match up your experience with mine, then I can tell you how hopeless of a solution, of a predicament you're in. And then, only then, will you start to see, will a person start to, did I start to see that, man, the spiritual life is, like they say, it's the only solution, right? And maybe I'm hopeless enough that I'll get it. It gets me specific. And then probably even the most important thing is like practicing these principles in all my affairs. Like these principles of recovery, like make my whole life better. As a result of this, I went from being like all alone, 3 different gunshot wounds. My family just hated to see me coming, couldn't hold a job. Today, I can be a brother to my sister. I can be a son to my father. I can be an employable person. I can be a coworker amongst coworkers. I can be a friend to somebody. These are the promises, right? I can get these gifts, right, if I practice these principles in all my affairs. And I do more of that with my actions than I do my words, right? Nobody wants to hear you talking incessantly about some spiritual shit. It makes you seem like you're on some spiritual mountaintop and you know some shit, right? It just is what it is. But that's about all I got. I appreciate y'all.